Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of our lecture on Chapter 12, Measures of Interest and Values. In part 1 of our lecture on Chapter 12, we focus heavily on the interest inventories, and in part 2, we're going to focus on the values inventories that are available to counselors. So, it's important to start by describing values because assessment tools are available to measure both work and personal values. And those two things are different from one another but heavily related. Work values are a type of personal value that relates to motivations for working. Personal values, on the other hand, is a much more broad range of motivations that can be related to school, family, community, leisure, and work. Some examples of values that are measured by values inventories might include things like security, achievement, dominance, conformity, and humility. These are common values that show up in a lot of values inventories, both at the work value setting and at the personal value setting. It's important to keep in mind that values inventories can be used both as standalone instruments or as part of a larger, more comprehensive career planning program, so in conjunction with an interest inventory or maybe even an aptitude inventory. Work values inventories assess values that pertain primarily to work situations. So these work values inventories measure objectives that can be satisfied in the work itself, which we oftentimes call intrinsic values, or values that can be established through work as a means to an end. And we call these extrinsic values. Intrinsic values include things like creativity, mental challenge, and achievement, where extrinsic values include things like prestige, income, and working conditions. Both types of values need to be taken into consideration in career planning. So there are 4 common work values inventories. The first of those is the work importance profiler and the work importance locator, which the work importance profile has its alternative, which is the work importance locator. And both of them are available free through the ONET website. And they provide scores for 6 core values. Those values include achievement, independence, recognition, values, support, and working conditions. This tool is useful to use with other instruments that are available on the ONET website. So it's best when used in conjunction, as the entire ONET website is used as a tool. We also have the Work Values Inventory Revised, which is a tool designed to evaluate the relative importance of 12 values for clients. Those values include creativity, mental challenge, achievement, independence, prestige, income, security, work environment, supervision, coworkers, lifestyle, and variety. We also have the Career Orientation Placement and Evaluation Survey, which is part of the COPS system that we talked about earlier. And this particular system, or this particular inventory, measures work values on 8 bipolar scales. So everyone is given sort of a location on each of these scales in terms of their work values. So those scales include investigative versus accepting, practical versus carefree, independence versus conformity, leadership versus supportive, orderliness versus flexibility, recognition versus privacy, aesthetic versus realistic, and social versus reserved. So the person is shown their complete profile on where they fall in each of these categories. And then we also have the values scale and the salience inventory, which is its associated scale, which were both developed as part of a larger study on work importance. The values scale expanded the work values inventory to assess 15 work values on 21 scales. The values measured in addition to the original work values inventory include physical activity, physical prowess, risk, advancement, personal development, and cultural identity. When someone takes the values scale inventory, their scores are provided for 5 factors or orientations. And those factors include utilitarian orientation, orientation towards self-actualization, individualist orientation, social orientation, and adventurous orientation. We also have the personal values inventories, which can be used to evaluate what goals or objectives an individual considers to be important in a variety of situations beyond work itself. There are 6 common inventories for assessing personal values that we're going to discuss here. The first of those is the Rokeach Values Survey, which measures difference for various instrumental and terminal values. Instrumental values include values such as obedience, forgiveness, and imagination, and they represent modes of conduct. The terminal values include values such as beauty, adventure, and friendship, and they represent the end states of existence according to the Rokeach Value Survey. We also have the Schwartz Values Survey, which assesses 10 values that are considered applicable to most cultures. These values are arranged in a circumplex model with 2 bipolar dimensions running through it at right angles. Those 2 bipolar dimensions are self-transcendence versus self-enhancement, and openness to change versus conservation. So that creates the right angle sort of bipolar dimensions, and then all other personal values are mapped in a circumplex model compared to those or on those. And the values are arranged on the circumplex so that the values that are closer together have the most in common, and those across from each other have the least in common. So, for example, the values of tradition and conformity are close to one another because they are similar to one another, and both of them are farther away from stimulation because they are the most dissimilar. And there are values that are more universally accepted by people, such as benevolence. And when those more universally accepted values show up, they take up more space in the circumplex to represent that they are more universally accepted. We also have, counselors can also consider using the Portrait's Values Questionnaire, which assesses 19 more narrowly defined values, and clients are asked to indicate to what degree values portrayed by different individuals compare to their own. So it creates this portrait of how someone is in comparison to the important people in their lives. And we also have the study of values, which measures 6 personal values. Those values include theoretical, economic, aesthetic, social, political, and religious. And the items ask people to choose among different values in terms of their preference in particular situations. So a good example of this is when when a client is asked, which individual out of Aristotle and Abraham Lincoln do you feel made the greatest contribution to society? And then clients have to decide based on those what they value based on who represents or answers that question. So there's no manual for the assessment of the study of values, which means that this particular inventory can be a little bit more difficult to use, especially because it's not necessarily standardized, and it tends to be, for that reason, more exploratory with your clients to get to know them better and to understand where they place their personal values. There's also the Salience Inventory, which measures the importance of 5 life roles for individuals in the context of Super's lifespan model of career development, which includes the following values: studying, working, community service, home, and leisure activities. Those are the life roles. And these life roles are measured for 3 perspectives: participation, commitment, and values expectations. The Salience Inventory can help clarify a client's readiness to engage in career planning by indicating the relative significance of career in the client's life. It can be used to identify and explore role conflicts within clients or between clients and their environment. So it's really effective at being able to see where those conflicts exist, both within the client and from the client with their current environment. And finally, we have the quality life inventory, which evaluates how important individuals perceive 16 typical aspects of life, such as learning, helping, and health, and how satisfied the client is with each of these aspects in their own life. This particular assessment is often serves as a vehicle for discussing values with clients. So it really opens the door to talking about values in the context of the client's world and in relation to the assessment that they're seeking. And we also have values that can be measured through values clarification exercises. Values clarification exercises are strategies that enable clients to identify and make comparisons among their values, and they can be really useful as alternatives to standardized tools of values, so in lieu of traditional values inventories. Compared to traditional inventories, values clarification exercises require clients to engage in self-assessment at a deeper level that takes into account actual behavior as well as their preferences. The exercises ask clients to review their abilities and behaviors in response to different situations. And these values clarification exercises encourage clients to assume a more active role in exploring and expressing their values. So, really, these values clarification exercises provide the client with a more comprehensive view of themselves whilst going through the process of career exploration. Some common examples of these values exercises, these value clarification exercises, are No Dwell's career values card sort, the life values inventory, and the values conflict resolution assessment. Many of these values clarification exercises and others are really helpful to identify the conflicts clients experience in their own values. So, particularly in the card sort experiment or the card sort exercise, clients are asked to rate what they value most in terms of their life or work, and they are asked to rank them in comparison to each other, and clients are forced to put their values on a standard bell curve, so they can only have a limited number of values that are of most importance to them and of least importance to them, and it gradually increases so that the majority of their values are somewhere in the middle. And this really helps the client to identify where their values are in relation to other values in their lives, but also where those values lie within themselves in terms of what's most important. And it really highlights some of those conflicts that are naturally occurring in the career exploration process and in personal values. So that is where we are going to wrap up our lecture on chapter 12. Here are your questions to review the content from this lecture, and I will see you all in the next lecture.